Welcome back to the Cryptid Iceberg. I just wanted to thank you all for 1,000 subscribers. It really means a lot, especially for a small channel. If you aren't subscribed, like the majority of my viewers, please do so. It really makes a big difference. Thank you all for watching. Gray aliens. Grays are among the most common type of non-human intelligence encountered. Roughly half of alien encounters in the United States and Europe are with gray aliens. They are commonly described as small and childlike, with bald, bulbous foreheads and large black eyes. The head is very large, especially in comparison to the neck, which was compared to a pumpkin on a stick by one abductee. It's common for the abductee to witness 2 to 3 grays inside their home, who escort the abductee into the UFO. Many alien abduction victims report being medically examined by these beings after being taken aboard their crafts. In general, the smaller gray aliens are commonly reported by abductees to seemingly operate as if they were part of a hive mind, with all of the grays acting and dressing the exact same way, with very little individuality. Abductees often report that the short grays are tasked with taking the abductees to the UFO, removing their clothes, escorting them to the examination room, and performing some non-specialized procedures, such as what appears to be some sort of physical exam. The tall grays, sometimes described as a doctor or specialist by abductees, then engages in more complex procedures, such as the harvesting of biological material. If we look at some close encounter cases, we see that grays are said to have the ability to paralyze humans, such as in the Valensol case. It's also very commonly said that the grays have a form of telepathy, with the ability to directly interface with the minds of humans to relay messages or induce feelings of serenity.
One of the most credible encounters with grays and non-human intelligence in general took place at the Ariel International School in Rua, Zimbabwe. On September 16, 1994, children from the Ariel School were outside playing and enjoying their mid-morning break when something strange began. 62 children would bear witness to the following with staggering consistency. The children saw what most would describe as a silver flying saucer, accompanied by other smaller crafts, fly overhead and land in a nearby field. Some witnessed the other objects land on the opposite end of the field.
When the children got closer, they saw multiple non-human beings outside of the landed craft. Most of the descriptions and later drawings of the beings matched the classic gray alien, though there were multiple beings, some of which were a little different. The witnesses described the beings moving in a very unnatural way. They seemed to hover, float, and glide, sometimes seemingly disappearing and reappearing in different places, or teleporting. At one point, one of the grays disappeared and reappeared in front of 2 witnesses at a distance of roughly 1 meter. Again, this took place in broad daylight, and at a very close distance. These witnesses are certain of what they saw to this very day. The encounter itself lasted 10 to 15 minutes, although some of the witnesses described a sort of time dilation effect, which is also common with these type of events. Members of the school staff were convinced the encounter took place by the frightened behavior of the children. The day after the encounter, Cynthia Hind, a local UFO researcher and author, interviewed the witnesses and asked them to draw the encounter. The different cultural backgrounds of the children from the Ariel International School caused them to have different interpretations of what they witnessed. Some of the children described the beings as Tokoloshes, malevolent dwarf-like spirits from Zulu mythos. Many of the children described being particularly disturbed by the eyes of the beings. This too is common with many other reports. Cynthia Hind was able to contact Dr. John Mack, the head of Harvard's psychiatry department and specialist in child and adolescent psychology. Mack also wanted to interview the witnesses because of his work with alien abductees. Like many others, John Mack was completely skeptical of the phenomenon before closely examining the evidence. He found his patients to be normal, honest people
not suffering from mental illnesses, who have experienced encounters, contact, and abduction by non-human intelligence. John Mack risked his career and even his tenure at Harvard to make this stance, as the university debated on removing John Mack's tenure because of this. As John Mack specialized in child psychology, his assessment of the aerial landing and his interviews with the witnesses are crucial to understanding this case. Like his many abductee patients, he found the witnesses to be of sound mind, honest, yet clearly affected by what they saw. Mack's professional opinion was that the children were recounting a real experience, not something fictitious or imagined.
Did you see the eyes? What did they look like?
They were going like that.
Where was the pointy part? Was the pointy part in here, or was the pointy part out there? Up there. And what was the feeling when you looked at the eyes?
It was scary.
And what scary? Why? What made it scary?
The eyes looked evil.
Evil. And what was evil about them? Say what you mean by evil.
It looked evil because it was just staring at me.
With what? Staring at you as if what? As if to do what?
As if it wanted to come and take us.
As if it wanted to come and take you. That was the feeling you got? That it wanted you to go with it? Did you feel like you wanted to go with it? No. Did you feel, what was the effect on you when you felt it wanted to have you go with it?
I just walked away and I started crying.
At the time of this recording, UFO whistleblower David Grush has recently come forward and testified under oath that the United States government has covered up illegal above top secret programs to retrieve crashed UFOs and biological evidence of, quote, non-human intelligence. The testimony of David Grush, as well as other whistleblowers who have yet to go public at this time for fear of retaliation, has clearly influenced and informed Congress to create the UAP Disclosure Act, even giving legal definitions for non-human intelligence, technology of unknown origin, referencing flying saucers, and even the 6 observables, or characteristics of true UFOs. Journalists Ross Coulthart and Michael Schellenberger are in touch with the 30-plus whistleblowers who have yet to go public, and there are a number of things which are confirmed independently from each whistleblower. According to Coulthart, most of the whistleblowers agree that the majority of the non-human biologics recovered fit the description of the classic gray alien. If this is true, then the world will owe a debt to a group of people who have been gaslighted, ridiculed, and mocked for sharing what was, in some cases, the most traumatic event of their lives. Wendigo. The Wendigo is a cannibalistic monster or evil spirit from Native American folklore. In most of these legends, the Wendigo serves as a metaphor for greed and excessive consumption. The most common legend about the Wendigo states that men transform into Wendigo by committing cannibalism. In some accounts, the Wendigo is said to be a giant creature much larger than humans, which grows with every meal. The Wendigo's lust for human flesh can never be sated, no matter how many humans it consumes. Scholar Basil H. Johnston gave this description of a Wendigo, quote, "The Wendigo was gaunt to the point of emaciation, its desiccated skin pulled tightly over its bones. With its bones pushing out against its skin, its complexion the ash gray of death, and its eyes pushed back deep into their sockets, the Wendigo looked like a gaunt skeleton recently disinterred from the grave. What lips it had were tattered and bloody, unclean and suffering from suppuration of the flesh. The Wendigo gave off a strange and eerie odor of decay and decomposition, of death and corruption." Wendigo psychosis has been documented several times where an individual believes they are possessed by the spirit of the Wendigo and become obsessed with cannibalism, usually after being in a situation with no food. Historically, individuals suffering from Wendigo psychosis were often killed in order to prevent the inevitable cannibalism. In the Jesuit Relations, published in 1661, we are given the following description of Wendigo psychosis. Quote, "Those poor men, according to the report given to us, were seized with an ailment unknown to us, but not very unusual among the people we were seeking. They're afflicted with neither lunacy, hypochondria, nor frenzy, but have a combination of all these species of disease, which affects their imaginations and causes them a more than canine hunger. This makes them so ravenous for human flesh that they pounce upon women, children, and even upon men like veritable werewolves, and devour them voraciously, without being able to appease or glut their appetite, ever seeking fresh prey, and the more greedily, the more they eat. Bessie. Lake Erie is the shallowest of the 5 Great Lakes of North America, and is also the most biologically diverse of all the Great Lakes, with the highest amount of fish production. The lake is also said to house the Lake Erie monster, otherwise known as the Great Snake of Lake Erie, which is often described as a gray serpentine lake monster, often compared to the famous Loch Ness monster. The oldest legends of a monster in Lake Erie come from the First Nations. Onyere, the Mohawk word for snake, was said to be a water spirit that lives in the Great Lakes. It was described as a horned draconic snake that breathed poison and fire. It was said to capsize canoes and devour humans, though the creature was said to spare travelers who make a sufficient sacrifice, similar to other native legends of lake monsters. The first recorded sighting, which is attributed to Bessie, took place in 1793, when the captain of a sloop called Felicity was sailing through Lake Erie when a gray serpent, at least 16 feet in length, began thrashing in the water next to the boat. The captain allegedly feared that his boat would be capsized by the creature, a sentiment shared among many encounters with Bessie. In 1960, Ken Gollick was fishing off a pier in Sandusky when he heard 2 rats. He decided to throw a couple of rocks at them when he saw the creature, and as he watched it, it pushed itself out of the lake with its 4 flippers and rested on a nearby beach. In 1969, Jim Shinder stated that a serpent came within 6 feet of him near the South Bass Island in Lake Erie. He alleged that the creature was 2 feet wide. The creature was sighted by a woman named Teresa Kovat, who described the creature as reptilian and snake-like, with big flippers, much like those of a plesiosaur. She was able to see the creature from the boat she was on, and stated, "It was so large, it could have easily capsized a boat. It seemed to be playing," unquote. She described the great snake as frolicking in the water, and oddly enough, in the time since the initial encounters, sightings have actually been increasing in frequency. The bloop. The sound you just heard was the bloop, recorded by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, in 1977. The sound was loud enough to be recorded on multiple sensors up to 3,000 miles away, and the frequency rose over the span of a minute. So whatever the source was, it was immensely powerful. NOAA's Christopher Fox put forward the theory that the bloop was not caused by man or a geological process, but by a creature. For the bloop to be detected on multiple sensors, some at a distance of 3,000 miles away, this creature would be titanic, even in comparison to the largest whales. In 2012, NOAA changed their stance on the bloop, stating that it was most likely an icequake. Here is the sound of an iceberg running aground recorded by NOAA. Though it seems that the bloop really was just an icequake, it's entirely possible that a titanic leviathan of a sea creature is lurking in the unexplored depths of the ocean, yet to be discovered, especially when deep-sea gigantism, otherwise known as abyssal gigantism, is taken into account. Though it's not well studied due to the inaccessibility of the deepest parts of the ocean, creatures which dwell in the abyss increase in size with depth, becoming much larger than their shallower water counterparts. Examples of this include the Japanese spider crab, with the specimen on screen being 12 feet long, and our friends the giant squid and the bigfin squid, which we talked about in part 1. Abyssal gigantism is thought to be caused by decreased predation, food scarcity. If we look at Kleber's law, the larger an animal gets, the more efficient its metabolism becomes. In conditions of food scarcity, this can result in gigantism. It's also thought to be caused by colder temperatures, or Bergman's rule, meaning that colder temperatures cause animals to become larger. So it's possible that there could be giants dwelling in the deepest depths of the abyss, some of which we'd probably rather not discover. The Lake Champlain Monster. Lake Champlain is a 125-mile-long body of fresh water and is said to be the dwelling of a sea monster. There have been over 300 sightings of this creature, which is also compared to the Loch Ness Monster. Legends of sea serpents in Lake Champlain date back to ancient times. The Mohawk called the creature Onyerakoa, a great horned serpent, or spirit, that inhabited the lake and possessed supernatural powers, similar to other native legends of sea monsters or spirits. According to an 1819 report in the Plattsburgh Republican titled Cape and Serpent on Lake Champlain, a Captain Crumb encountered a sea serpent nearly 200 feet long with 3 teeth and eyes the color of peeled onion. Captain Crumb also said that the creature had a belt of red around its neck and what looked like a star on its forehead. In 1883, Sheriff Nathan H. Mooney saw the serpent from the shore. He claimed that it was 25 to 30 feet long and that he was close enough to see white spots inside of its mouth. The sheriff's encounter encouraged more eyewitnesses to come forward. In 1977, Sandra Mansi took this photo, now known as the Mansi photograph, of what she believed to be Champ. She sent the photo to Philip Raines, a nautical expert at the State University of New York, to authenticate it. However, she was unable to produce the negative of the photo or find the exact location where the picture was taken, making authentication virtually impossible. Further investigations have found that Mansi likely overestimated the size of the object, which was in all likelihood just a log, and the bay area where the photo was likely taken is no deeper than 14 feet, making it impossible for a giant sea monster to be lurking there. In the summer of 2005, fisherman Dick Affolter and his stepson Pete Baudet recorded a video of what is believed to be the Lake Champlain monster. The creature got so close that at one point the men feared the creature may even ram their boat. The only publicly available clips of the Baudet film were aired by ABC News in 2005 when the story broke. ABC News even had 2 former FBI analysts examine the film, who found it to be unmanipulated and authentic. One of the agents did state that at no point in the film is it possible to see any creature above the water. However, according to witnesses and cryptozoologists who have seen the full film, at one point, the creature is close enough for the glint of sunlight to be seen in its eye. So, unfortunately, only a short clip from the film has been released to the public, and it's my understanding that a lawyer is holding the footage, which can be viewed for a fee of $10,000. Cryptozoologists who have seen the footage claim that it is the best evidence of Champ yet. Hopefully in the future we can get this released to the public. There have been mysterious alligator-like tracks found around Lake Champlain, causing some to believe that Champ could be in the crocodile family, while others believe that the tracks could have been left by a large snapping turtle. Additionally, mysterious sounds have been recorded in Lake Champlain, which are similar to sounds made by beluga whales or dolphins. However, neither animal exists in the lake. Here are the unexplained sounds. The cryptozoologist who recorded the audio believes that they captured the sea serpent using echolocation to find food. It's important to note that no animals known to exist in Lake Champlain use sonar, and no known reptile uses sonar either. It's possible that, like the Loch Ness Monster, which is likely a giant eel, sightings of Champ could in reality be extremely large sturgeon. Perhaps if the Baudet film is ever released to the public, we will get our answer. Amomongo. Often called the Bigfoot of the Philippines, the creature is described as a man-sized bipedal ape with white fur and long nails by both Visayan folklore and modern eyewitness reports. The creature is believed to live at the foot of the volcano Mount Canleon in the Visayan Islands. The name Amomongo translates to ape, monkey, or gorilla, though there are no gorillas that live in the area. On June 9th, 2008, Elias Galvez, and Salvador Aguilar of La Castellana suffered multiple attacks from the cryptid. Medical records backed up the eyewitness reports, showing wounds to their faces, backs, and abdomens. The town's police chief, Ted Velez, also stated that numerous other residents have reported being attacked by the creature well into the next day, and that the creature also reportedly disemboweled numerous goats and chickens, consuming their entrails. La Castellana mayor stated that the creature is not a witch or an asswang, the vampiric shapeshifter that we discussed in level 1 of the iceberg, but a wild animal that was possibly starving. Quote, "This is one possibility because there may be no food now in the mountain. Or it might be that Amomongo's habitat has been disturbed by humans. Thus, it runs wild." Unquote. Some believe that the Amomongo could be an albino ape, though there are no albino apes proven to exist even remotely in the area. Regardless, something attacked people and slaughtered animals near Mount Canleon, and the witnesses say it was the Amomongo. Snallygaster. In the 1730s, German immigrants settling in Frederick County, Maryland, would report the first sightings of the Snallygaster, or Schnellergeist, which is German for quick ghost. Later reports would come out of Maryland and Washington, D.C. The earliest depictions of the Snallygaster describe it as part bird and part reptilian, with a metallic beak and razor-sharp fangs. The creature has large wings as well as tentacles, allowing the Snallygaster to easily swoop down and snatch its prey before sucking the blood of its victims. Additional reports state that the creature has a 25-foot wingspan, claws with sharp talons made of hot, glowing metal, and a third eye, which is red, in the middle of its forehead. It's also said that the Snallygaster has a keen sense of smell that aids in helping track down its dinner, and that the creature emanates an unpleasant smell. The creature emitting an unpleasant smell is common in older tales of demons which are said to smell like sulfur, as well as modern cryptid encounters where the creatures are said to smell like sulfur or another unpleasant odor. The Snallygaster seems to be based on older Germanic tales of draconic beasts and blood-sucking monsters that prey upon humans. Septograms were said to ward off the Schnellergeist, and the same 7-pointed stars can still be seen on barns today. Interestingly, the Snallygaster has a mortal enemy, the Dwyo, a wolfman-type creature, and the two are said to attempt to kill each other on sight. In 1909, there was a series of newspaper articles which alleged that many sightings of the Snallygaster were taking place. The Smithsonian offered a cash reward for the creature, and even US President Theodore Roosevelt considered postponing a trip to the African safari in order to hunt the creature himself. One article from February 1909 claimed that a man had been seized by the winged creature, which proceeded to sink its teeth into his jugular and drain his body of blood before dropping him along a hillside. However, the 1909 newspaper articles are now agreed to have been a hoax perpetrated by the Middleton Valley Register in an attempt to increase readership. Devil Monkey. The Devil Monkey is an alleged baboon-like cryptid reported across North America, usually in the remote forests of Appalachia and the Pacific Northwest. Devil monkeys have been reported at 3 to 7 feet tall. Aside from its baboon, or sometimes canine-like face, the devil monkey stands out amongst other similar cryptids by its aggressive nature. There are allegedly encounters with this creature reported in newspapers dating back to 1934, though I was unable to find a primary source for this. In the alleged 1934 encounter, the devil monkey was described as having the ability to leap across fields and possessing lightning speed. In 1954, a couple identified only as Boyd were driving through the mountains near Saltville, Virginia, when their car was suddenly attacked by a baboon-like creature. The Boyd's daughter, Pauline, stated, quote, "It had light, taffy-colored hair, with a white blaze down its neck and underbelly. It stood on 2 large, well-muscled back legs and had shorter front legs or arms." They went on to describe a second devil monkey encounter that occurred just days later in the same region. Quote, "Several days after this incident, 2 nurses from the Saltville area were driving home from work one morning and were attacked by an unknown creature who ripped the convertible top from their car." Unquote. Prominent Canadian author and Sasquatch researcher John Willison Green amassed a collection of 3,000 sightings and tracks of unknown bipedal primates. Among his investigations, John Green investigated a devil monkey sighting, wherein tracks were left behind. These tracks were described as possessing 3 toes as well as claws. Cryptozoologist Loren Coleman investigated the slaughter of livestock, which was associated with a devil monkey encounter. In an interview with Animal Planet, Coleman stated, quote, "I investigated that case in depth. I interviewed the people who were very sincere. In the whole context of devil monkey reports, it seemed extremely sincere. You have these reports of hairy, monkey-like creatures with tails, very different from Bigfoot," unquote. Loren Coleman believes that sightings of, quote, "phantom kangaroos," meaning kangaroos reported in areas with 0 native population, and no reports of escaped kangaroos, whether pets or from zoos, could be misidentified devil monkeys. Deloy's ape. During an expedition to Venezuela in 1920, Swiss oil geologist Louis François Fernand Hector Deloy encountered and killed what is now known as Deloy's ape. While resting in the jungle near the Tara River, Deloy alleged that 2 bipedal monkeys, roughly 4 feet tall, emerged from the vegetation and began screaming and breaking branches. The 2 apes began to wield the branches like weapons, and, to their horror, the 2 apes then began to toss their own feces at Deloy and his companions, mortifying them. In response to the feces throwing, they opened fire on the primates, aiming to kill the larger, more aggressive male, but only wounded him before he vanished back into the jungle. They were able to murder the female, and he alleged that the ape lacked a tail and had a unique number of teeth, 32, compared to the 36 of most New World monkeys, which would distinguish it from most known primates. Deloy then propped up the creature and photographed it. Deloy would simply stow away the photo in his notebook and forget about the encounter. However, years later, Deloy's friend, French anthropologist Georges Montandon, discovered the photo of Deloy's ape while looking through his notebook, and began to argue that Deloy's ape was actually a missing link between man and ape. Montandon was a proponent of a now debunked theory of human origins, suggesting that local human races evolved separately from multiple different primate ancestors, such as gorilla, orangutans, and others. He convinced Deloy to go along with this, and the two faced massive scrutiny from the scientific community. Montandon supported his theory with accounts by the indigenous tribes of a creature they called the Big Devil, which supposedly attacked women. Critics argued that there was no way to verify most of their claims, as the skull of the ape was lost, leaving no way to verify the dental evidence, and no photo was taken of the creature's backside to prove its lack of a tail, as well as no way to prove that the ape was bipedal. Among other things, judging by the creature's spider monkey-like face, and some facts regarding the genitalia of spider monkeys I'd much rather forget, it has been soundly determined that Deloy's ape was a spider monkey. Dodo. The dodo bird is a, for now, extinct, flightless bird. Native to the island of Mauritius off the coast of southeast Africa, the dodo is actually an ex-cryptid, as it was widely believed to be a mythical creature until the 19th century, much like the kangaroo and the gorilla. After the arrival of humans, the dodo became prey for the first time, as it had no natural predators on its island paradise. Along with humanity, many other species were introduced, such as rats, goats, pigs, and deer. The introduction of predators, combined with the fact that dodos were particularly easy to hunt, and the dodo's low birth rates, laying only 1 egg a year, contributed to the demise of the species by 1690. Very seldomly people will claim to have a sighting of a surviving dodo bird, but there is no real evidence for the bird's survival. These accounts are likely misidentifications or hoaxes. However, the dodo may soon be resurrected by modern science, as we have both the dodo's DNA and the technology to do so. Colossal laboratories and biosciences are working on the de-extinction of this callously slaughtered flightless bird. The company intends to not only resurrect the dodo, but create a preservation for the dodo on its native home. Fiji mermaid. Another outright hoax. The Fiji mermaid is a mummified corpse consisting of the head and torso of a monkey stitched to the lower half of a fish, which was allegedly caught near the Fiji Islands in the South Pacific Ocean. Allegedly, the Fiji mermaid was sold to an American sea captain by Japanese sailors for $6,000. In 1842, the Fiji mermaid was displayed in the Museum of Phineas Taylor Barnum, better known as P.T. Barnum. The creature was described as, quote, an ugly, dried-up, black-looking diminutive specimen, about 3 feet long. Its mouth was open, its tail turned over, and its arms thrown up, giving it the appearance of having died in great agony. Unquote. P.T. Barnum is a known fraud and essentially a snake oil salesman. He coined the phrase, quote, there's a sucker born every minute, unquote. The original Fiji mermaid disappeared and was likely destroyed in one of the fires that destroyed much of P.T. Barnum's collections. Ghosts. One of the oldest concepts in mythology and religion. Ghosts are understood to be the spirits or souls of the dead, often remaining on Earth because of unfinished business from their lives, usually because they were murdered or meeting a similarly macabre or cruel death. Many objects, locations, and in some cases even people, are said to be haunted by the spirits of the dead. There have been numerous alleged photographs of ghosts, as well as EVPs or electronic voice phenomenon, where ghosts can allegedly be heard, although there is no solid evidence. One theory that I've always found interesting is the idea that ghost sightings could simply be an imprintation of residual energy left behind by a person, performing the same action over and over throughout their lives. For example, a ghost seen in a rocking chair is not a conscious spirit with agency, but the imprintation of the residual energy left behind by an individual who used that rocking chair over and over in their life. British mathematician Charles Howard Hinton lived from 1853 to 1907. He was very interested in the physics of higher dimensions. A lot of his work focused on attempting to explain the geometry of higher spatial dimensions. In 1888, he actually coined the term tesseract in an attempt to better explain the fourth dimension. One of his first articles was called Ghosts Explained. Hinton attempted to explain how to imagine and visualize the fourth dimension by arguing that, as from 2 dimensions to 3 dimensions, so from 3 dimensions to 4. Many spiritualists, theosophists, and occultists of the time used Hinton's work as an explanation for spirits, psychic phenomenon, and the source of the non-human intelligences mediums claim to make contact with. Many of these groups believed that meditating on the tesseract and visualizing it could possibly allow glimpses into alternate dimensions, apparitions, and other occult or psychic phenomenon. Hinton also wrote about the benefits of learning to access the fourth dimension with the mind. He believed that this higher dimensional thought could allow our consciousnesses to become more interconnected. Hinton saw the fourth dimension as both physically and psychically real, and believed that it could explain such phenomena as ghosts, ESP, and even synchronicities. Hinton described the soul as, quote, a four-dimensional organism which expresses its higher physical being in the symmetry of the body and gives the aims and motives of human existence, unquote. Parapsychologists have theorized that poltergeist activity could be caused, at least in some cases, by an explosion of subconscious psychokinesis. Extreme emotional states, and often the presence of a teenager, seem to coincide with poltergeist activity in many cases. If we look at the CIA's archives, many records from the Society of Psychical Research, among other parapsychological studies and documents on discarnate apparitions and poltergeist activity, can be found. Many of these records were connected to a series of military intelligence programs focused on studying and weaponizing psychic phenomenon, which would later be called Project Stargate. The Society for Psychical Research was founded in 1882 with the intent of scientifically analyzing unexplained phenomena without prejudice. In parapsychology, the term apparition is often favored over spirit or ghost, so as not to describe this unexplained phenomenon with ingrained assumptions as to its origin. One of the Society for Psychical Research documents, held in the archives of the Central Intelligence Agency, describes a haunting or poltergeist case from 1973, which is well known in Brazil. Researchers thoroughly investigated this case, collecting over 6 hours of audio interviews with the multiple witnesses from the family, as well as other witnesses. They also took photographs of the damage to the property. The phenomenon began with inexplicable cuts appearing on the furniture and other objects. This happened both in the presence of witnesses and in the absence of anyone. Apparitions of a hairy beast-like or ape-like creature with claws was present throughout every phase of the phenomenon. One of the witnesses, Pedro, stated, quote, "I saw the hand and arm of a beast, a monster, not a man. It was very strong and big, very sharp nails. The fur was red, fine, shiny." Much of the unexplained phenomenon seemed to center around a pregnant woman, Noemia, Pedro's wife. Noemia saw the shadowy figure of an entity similar to a gorilla. At one point, Pedro called over 2 of his neighbors to see the cuts for themselves. The neighbors were very skeptical, but as they questioned Noemia about the cuts, they too saw an apparition of an enormous hand, causing one of the witnesses to faint. She later described seeing a large creature with dark fur and long fingers. This phenomenon began to overwhelm the family, who feared their house was haunted, so they moved. This is when Phase 2 began. Orbs or fireballs were seen inexplicably floating throughout the house. Stones were thrown against the roof of their new house. Witnesses were even struck with bricks, seemingly thrown by no one. Stones, sometimes large stones, massive rocks, seemed to move on their own, and even fall straight down from the sky like rain onto the house. As I said, much of the unexplained phenomenon seemed to center around Noemia. The phenomenon progressed from cuts appearing on furniture to witnesses receiving cuts, and Noemia received more cuts than anyone else. Noemia was reportedly cut on her face practically every morning. She was also cut even while outside the house. She described receiving these cuts as feeling like a burning sensation. Now, most of these cuts were superficial and may cause only minor bleeding, but this wasn't always the case. One girl received a deep cut on her leg while visiting, and another child reportedly suffered a deep cut to the thigh. The cut was so deep that the child's grandmother was certain he must have sat on a razor blade, and so they searched, but there was no sharp object. The family would eventually be followed by the phenomenon between 3 different houses. Altered states of consciousness, similar to a trance, were experienced, and described by researchers as possession phenomenon. It was the opinion of researcher Hernani Andrade, who thoroughly studied the case and the witnesses, that someone performed a ritual to feed from Noemia's energy, and perhaps the energy of her child, to create the poltergeist phenomenon. Some UFO and Fortean researchers believe that there is an overlap between what we would traditionally call the paranormal or supernatural and the UFO phenomenon, despite the fact that there is very clearly a physical nuts and bolts aspect to the UFO phenomenon. Some UFO reports involve paranormal phenomenon, such as poltergeist activity following a UFO sighting. These type of encounters, reports of apparitions, are among the most common unexplained phenomena reported throughout all of history. New studies into near-death experiences seem to show that the NDE is not an illusion or a dream, but a, quote, new dimension of reality experienced by the dying person. And here as well, apparitions are a very common occurrence, regardless of whether or not you believe in ghosts yourself. Apparitions are among the most common unexplained phenomena reported across the world and throughout time, and I have no doubt in my mind that these reports will continue long after we've passed on. Giant anaconda. The green anaconda found in South America is the largest known snake in the world. It can weigh up to 550 pounds, and specimens have been verified to be 20 to 30 feet long, possibly even larger. They are nocturnal and spend most of their time in or around water, and can be terrifyingly fast swimmers. The green anaconda is a non-venomous constrictor, meaning it coils around its prey to crush and choke its victim to death. They're even large enough to eat deer. However, the giant anaconda is said to be multiple times larger than the green anaconda. Percy Fawcett, a famous British archaeologist, geographer, and explorer of South America, reported an encounter with the giant anaconda.
Fawcett claims that the anaconda he witnessed in Bolivia was 62 feet long and possessed, quote, a penetrating, fetid odor, probably its breath, unquote. Other explorers reported a similarly unbearable smell, usually caused by the anaconda's breath. Native legends corroborate these encounters with a giant serpent. However, in legend, the serpents are sometimes described as having black scales, horns, or large fiery eyes. In some tales, they are shapeshifters, which can even take on a human form and guard treasure or nature itself. It's entirely possible that a green anaconda even larger than the 30 feet long specimens could have existed at some point, even if it was just a green anaconda with a genetic defect or gigantism. Injured cold. November 2nd, 1966. A sewing machine salesman named Woodrow Derenberger was driving from Ohio back to his home in Mineral Wells, West Virginia, returning from a business trip. Along the way, a car began rapidly approaching Woodrow's car and went around him, evidently in a hurry. Woodrow then saw that 50 feet behind the other man's car was a UFO. Woodrow compared the UFO's shape to a kerosene lamp chimney. The UFO accelerated in front of Woodrow's car and landed, blocking the road. Woodrow stopped his truck. As soon as the UFO stopped, a hatch opened and a man stepped out. The UFO then began to hover above Woodrow's truck, and as other cars passed, they seemed totally oblivious to the UFO hanging over the road, as if they couldn't see it. The man approached Woodrow. He was wearing a black overcoat with glimmering coveralls beneath. He had dark hair combed straight back and kept his arms crossed. Strangest of all, the man wore a wide grin on his face. Other than that, Woodrow stated that, quote, he looked perfectly natural and normal as any human being, unquote. Although Woodrow never heard an audible voice, the man asked Woodrow to roll down his window, which he did. The man spoke into Woodrow's mind and told him that he would like to speak with him, and not to be frightened, but the man then told him that he could speak or think his answer. Woodrow was too stunned to speak, and the man said, quote, nice to meet you, Mr. Derenberger, unquote, and offered his own name, Injured Cold. He then told Woodrow again not to be afraid and that he wishes him no harm, only happiness. He then asked Woodrow about himself and about the nearby city of Parkersburg. Injured stated, quote, Mr. Derenberger, look at me. I am the same as you are. I sleep and breathe and bleed, even as you do, unquote.
A truck driver named Walter Vanskoy was heading north on I-77 and was able to confirm the encounter, as he saw Woodrow's truck and a man with a knee-length coat standing beside the truck. A second witness corroborating Woodrow's encounter. At the end of their telepathic conversation, Injured told Woodrow that he would return, and to report this encounter to the local authorities. Woodrow's encounter took place 10 days before the first recorded Mothman encounter, which was November 12, 1966. A deluge of high strangeness invaded the area of Point Pleasant, West Virginia, from 1966 to 67, with thousands witnessing unexplained phenomena. Author and UFO investigator John Keel traveled to Point Pleasant, West Virginia to research the ongoing events of high strangeness and sustained UFO activity in the area. Among the strange events reported were UFOs, Mothman, Men in Black which threatened witnesses, and also Injured Cold. During John Keel's visit to the Derenberger home, he too witnessed strange lights, which Woodrow believed were controlled by Injured Cold. John Keel interviewed many of the thousands of witnesses to the Point Pleasant UFO wave, and found many commonalities with Woodrow's encounter among the rest of his body of research. And he told Keel that during one of these encounters, Injured told him that his home planet was called Lanulos, and that it was in the Ganymede constellation, as seen from Earth. Keel noted that, unbeknownst to most, even among UFO researchers, a group of UFO contactees in Mexico claimed to have been taken to a planet in the Ganymede constellation in 1965, and UFO abductees from South America claimed that they were told by the occupants of flying saucers that they came from the same place in 1968. And again, Injured Cold wore glimmering, shining coveralls beneath his black coat. The same shining coveralls were commonly reported to be worn by various UFO nauts by many different witnesses. And again, I'm not saying that any of this is definitive, and neither does Keel, but it's definitely interesting. As Woodrow's encounters with Indrid Cold continued, he claimed that he was taken to Lanulos, Cold's home planet. Indrid would even tell Woodrow that Lanulos was settled by humans who left Earth in spaceships long ago, despite his encounters being considered outlandish by most. Woodrow's family, friends, and everyone who knew him contended that he was an honest man and that he was not lying. A psychiatrist who was among the first to examine Woodrow would go on to have his own UFO close encounters. I plan to cover Mothman and the entire Point Pleasant UFO wave in greater detail. I might even do a video focused on Indrid. I'll end this entry with a quote from John Keel, written for the foreword of Woodrow's book, Visitors from Lanulos. Quote, "No matter how bizarre their tales may be, no matter how emotionally unacceptable their accounts are, it stands to reason that if flying saucers do exist, then there is a chance, an excellent one, that one of these crackpots is really telling us the truth. Woodrow Derenberger may or may not be that one, but he at least deserves a hearing." Unquote. Kappa, a creature hailing from Japanese mythology. The kappa is a type of yokai, or kami, typically depicted as a frog-like humanoid, with webbed hands and a shell on its back. Kappa are said to inhabit rivers and bodies of water, and become vengeful when they are not revered as deities. They are fond of sumo wrestling, and enjoy cucumbers, which are said to pacify them. They are also known to assault humans who do not pay them tribute. Kappa are said to victimize humans by extracting a mythical organ called Shirikodama, which is said to house the soul. Kasai Rex. The Kasai Rex is a living dinosaur which allegedly dwells in the Kasai Valley of the Democratic Republic of the Congo. In 1934, an expert Swedish hunter named John Johansson ventured into the Kasai Valley in the Congo, intending to hunt an elephant. Eventually, he noticed 2 elephants and was about to fire at them, but he realized there was another large creature stalking the elephants from the underbrush. Later compared to a giant lizard or a T-Rex, and described the creature as reddish in color with blackish colored stripes. It had a long snout and numerous teeth. The legs were thick. It reminded me of a lion, built for speed. It jumped out of the underbrush, and John fired 3 times, with only one shot hitting the creature, causing it to flee. He then tried to retreat to his camp, crossing back through the swamp, where he encountered the creature again, eating a fallen rhinoceros. He no longer had his weapon with him, as he had given it to his servant, so he instead took a photo, which seems to be lost. There are other alleged photos of the creature, all of which are proven hoaxes. The following year, 1933, a party of 5, inspired by Johnson's encounter, tried and failed to locate the creature. To me, this creature seems like a complete hoax. Though the Kasai Rex is described by most as a theropod similar to the T-Rex, there is no evidence in the fossil record of such creatures in that area. The Lizard Man of Scape or Swamp. Most reports of reptilian beings are related to ancient mythology or alien abductions. However, outside of Bishopville, South Carolina, within Scape or Swamp, it's believed that there is a red-eyed reptilian creature which stalks humans. Sometime in the early fall of 1987, George Holloman Jr. was heading home on his bicycle just past midnight. He stopped and took a break to smoke when something caught his eye. What he initially believed was a tree stump revealed itself to be a humanoid who was 7 feet tall. A car drove past, with the headlights making the creature's eyes appear to glow red. As the car passed, the creature retreated back into the forest. When Holloman told the police about his encounter, he could describe the creature only as a haunt, meaning ghost or supernatural creature. Holloman only came forward after the most famous sighting, which took place June 29th, 1988. 17-year-old Christopher Davis was driving home from work at 2 a.m. when one of his tires went out. He pulled over on a road next to Scape or Swamp to change his tire. Once he was finished, he began walking back to his driver's side door when he saw a giant reptilian creature bounding towards him. Davis got in the car and began to drive. The creature tried to grab the car and failed, and then jumped onto the hood of the car. The creature was eventually thrown off the car as Davis swerved back and forth across the road. Quote, I looked back and saw something running across the field towards me. It was about 25 yards away, and I saw red eyes glowing. I ran into the car, and as I locked it, the thing grabbed the door handle. I could see him from the neck down. 3 big fingers, long black nails, and green, rough skin. It was strong and angry. I looked in my mirror and saw a blur of green running. I could see his toes, and then he jumped on the roof of my car. I thought I heard a grunt, and then I could see his fingers through the front windshield, where they curled around on the roof. I sped up and swerved to shake the creature off." Unquote. Upon making it home, Davis found that the driver's side mirror was twisted off, and deep claw-like scratches were found on the roof and on the door. Unfortunately, there are no photos of the damaged car. Davis was going to keep his encounter to himself, until, 2 weeks later, the sheriff asked the public for information regarding a strange attack of another vehicle. Strange, monstrous, 3-toed footprints were found, pressed into hard soil, and plaster casts were made of the strange footprints, some of which measured 14 inches in length, and can be seen on screen now. The South Carolina Department of Marine Sources stated that the footprints weren't from any known animal, and that there was no chance that this was caused by a damaged or mutated foot either. However, later on, the South Carolina Fish and Wildlife stated the footprints looked phony. Davis told the police every detail of his encounter. He drew this unartistic sketch of the reptilian for police, and passed a polygraph test of his reptilian encounter. Although, we all know now that lie detector tests are no longer considered credible. Professional skeptic Ben Radford states that the details of Chris Davis's encounter changed over time, becoming distorted, and he also questions some of the key details of the encounter, such as the visibility in the area at the time. Following Davis's report, there was a rash of lizard man sightings. According to Sheriff Truesdale, these reports were treated as seriously as any other case. State Representative Grady Brown believes that the initial sighting was a hoax. Was there someone dressed up like Lizard Man in 1988? Yes, I believe that. The individual who we thought was Lizard Man has since passed away. Lee County Sheriff Daniel Simons stated, quote, "Within the last 10 years, we have received several calls about a possible Lizard Man sighting, and we did an investigation. If people call, we don't turn them away. If someone says they have seen something unusual, we look into it." In 2008, a van belonging to Bob Rawson was seemingly attacked, with claw-like marks and damage practically all over the vehicle. In addition to this, the Rawson's cat went missing the same night, and adjacent farmers found that some of their cattle was murdered in the night. Allegedly. The police believed that this was caused by coyotes. The show Monster Quest came to the conclusion that it would require inhuman levels of strength to cause this amount of damage to the car. But there are obviously other explanations for the damage to this vehicle.
You see all the scratch mark, and the first thing everybody say, they go to Lizard Man return. Sheriff, the Lizard Man's back. And then, you think it's a joke, but you look at the damage of the vehicle, it's hard to say.
The Badajoz UFO Incident. November 12, 1976. At the Talavera La Real Air Base, located in Badajoz, Spain, Jose Trejo and Juan Lujan were in the fuel storage area of the base when they heard an unexplained high-pitched sound. The noise lasted for 5 minutes and then ended abruptly. They were mystified by the noise, which seemed to have no source. They readied their weapons and began to patrol the area. They were concerned that someone may have breached the base and was attempting to sabotage it. Suddenly, the sound began again, and ended after 5 minutes, just as it did before. However, this time, the men spotted a vertical light in the sky, which disappeared after around 15 seconds. Another soldier, Jose Hidalgo, and his military-trained wolf dog, asked the other 2 men if they too saw the light. They contacted their guard corporal, who told them to go inspect the site,
While walking to the site of the UFO, the men did not feel confident. As the men walked, their wolf dog was undeterred, which gave them some confidence. As they got closer, the men felt a, quote, whirlpool and heard branches breaking from trees. They released the wolf dog, and he ran to the source of the noise. The men stood and waited for the dog to bark, but instead, he came back stumbling, seemingly dazed. The dog then began to circle the men, which is part of its training, meaning it was trying to protect the soldiers. Trejo suddenly felt a dreadful feeling of being watched. And then, 15 meters away, the men saw a giant luminous humanoid, nearly 10 feet tall, and seemingly made of light. The creature's arms were held out to its sides, T-posing. Trejo attempted to fire on the entity, but he became paralyzed and fell to the floor. The other 2 men opened fire on the interloper. They fired 40 to 50 rounds. A bright flash emitted from the entity, and it vanished, replaced by the ear-piercing noise from before. The men helped Trejo up, and soon, the base was placed on high alert. A full search of the area was ordered, though the investigation found no evidence of the humanoid. Not even the spent shells were found in the area. What's really strange is that a few days later, Trejo's vision began to fail, and he fell unconscious. He was hospitalized multiple times at the Madrid Air Force Hospital, with the final conclusion that he suffered a nervous imbalance, which never happened before or after, only during the UFO encounter. The Montauk Monster. July 12th, 2008, in Montauk, New York. People walking along the Ditch Plains beach stumbled upon a bizarre carcass, which had washed up along the shore. One of the witnesses, 26-year-old Gianna Hewitt, took a now famous photograph of the creature. She stated, quote, "We were looking for a place to sit when we saw some people looking at something. We didn't know what it was. We joked that maybe it was something from Plum Island." She was referring to the Plum Island Animal Disease Center, a federal government facility which studies foreign animal diseases. During the Cold War, a secret biological weapons program was run out of Plum Island. The program allegedly ended in 1969. Conspiracy theories suggested that the Montauk Monster was the result of an experiment, a mutant or a chimera, an animal-human hybrid. Ultimately, it was determined that the Montauk Monster was actually a raccoon, partially decomposed by the ocean, causing its strange hairless appearance and its lack of an upper jaw. Mammoth. The mammoth is on this list for the same reasons as the dodo. Though it is extinct, some believe that relict populations survived the extinction, or at least survived longer than our established timeline. Native American and Siberian tribes have legends of a creature which sounds very similar to the woolly mammoth. In 1917, ethnologists recorded an account from the Casca tribe of northern British Columbia. They claimed that the woolly mammoth went extinct within the past few generations. In 1873, the zoologist published an interview with convicted Russian smuggler Chariton Bachmachnik, who told of his escape from the mines of Siberia. He fled south and eventually found himself in the Alden Mountains. He made a camp in a hidden valley where he reportedly encountered living woolly mammoths inside of a cave. In the future, the mammoth may truly walk again, as Colossal Bioscience plans to not only resurrect, but to rewild the mammoth, returning it to its natural habitat. The Hopkinsville Goblins. On August 21st, 1955, on the Sutton family's property near Hopkinsville, Kentucky, an infamous event in the history of close encounters took place. Friend of the Sutton family, Billy Ray Taylor, was getting water from the family's well when he witnessed a UFO with multicolored lights flying overhead. Witness illustrations depict an egg or tic-tac shaped craft. It stopped and hovered for a moment before descending, seeming to land near the north edge of the Sutton property. Billy Ray ran to warn the others in the Sutton family's house. Home. However, out of the 11 people there, none believed him initially. Billy Ray didn't believe that he'd witnessed anything extraterrestrial either. He assumed that it was from the nearby military base. An hour passed, and the family dogs began barking violently,
so Billy Ray and Lucky Sutton went to investigate. The dog was now hiding under the house with its tail between its legs. They then saw a glowing orb traveling towards them. As it got closer, a strange creature revealed itself. The creature had, quote, 2 large eyes with a yellow glow, more on the sides than in the human face, a long thin mouth, large bat-like ears, thin short legs, and unusually long arms with large hands ending in claws. The creature drew near, with its hands raised open towards the men, as if it was trying to surrender. The men readied their guns, and when the creature was 20 feet away, they fired. Though they were positive they hit the target, the creature just did a backflip and disappeared into the forest. At times, these creatures would seem to hover or float. For the next 4 hours, these creatures haunted the Sutton home. The men went through 4 boxes of 22 pistol shells trying to eliminate them. Though everyone was shaken, the children were becoming near hysterical as the beings continued to show themselves. The family waited for their chance and ran to their cars and sought the Hopkinsville police station. The local police went to investigate, accompanied by military police. They found numerous spent shells, bullet holes, and broken windows from the aftermath of the battle. The alleged creatures left behind no tracks or blood, but proponents of this case counter with a witness testimony stating that the creatures seemed to have the ability to float and that the witnesses never managed to spill the blood of the goblins. Police Sergeant Frank Dudas believed the witnesses because he and another city policeman witnessed flying saucers the previous year. He stated, "I think the whole story is entirely possible. I know I saw them. If I saw them, the Kelly story could certainly be true." The chief of police who led the search, Sergeant Greenwell, believed the family witnessed something strange because he also saw a UFO during the infamous 1952 UFO wave, which culminated in the UFOs seen over Washington, D.C. All officials involved found that there was no intoxication involved in the incident, and no drugs or alcohol were found inside the house. Despite this, many skeptics insist that this event was an alcohol-induced hallucination. Others argue that the UFO was a misidentified meteor, and that the creatures were misidentified horned owls. The family was clearly shaken and refused to return to the home until the search was complete. At 3:30 that night, the creatures returned, continuing to harass the family. By sunrise, the house was abandoned. Mantis Man, or Mantids. Paranormal researcher Lon Strickler received an email report of a giant praying mantis-type creature, which is a common example of these types of encounters. In 2006, a man fly fishing with his boss in the Musconetcong River near Hackettstown, New Jersey, noticed something out of the corner of his eye 20 yards away. A being resembling a giant praying mantis, 6 to 7 feet tall, was treading up the riverbank towards the field and looking over its left shoulder, staring directly at the witness. He had the sense that the creature was surprised it was spotted. It stared at him for a moment before vanishing into thin air. There are alleged sightings of similar creatures, at least 3 in the same area, dating back to at least 1987. Insect-type mantis beings, often resembling giant praying mantises, are often reported during close encounters of the 3rd and 4th kind. Dr. David Jacobs, who I discussed previously, has studied the abduction phenomena extensively and has written several books on the subject. From his data, Dr. Jacobs deduced that these insect-type aliens, or mantids as he calls them, seem to be dominant over the other common types of ETs, such as the gray aliens. The mantids are almost always seen with gray aliens, almost never by themselves. The mantids are sometimes reported as wearing a type of robe with a high collar or a cloak. Many abductees report the mantis-type beings seemingly overseeing the abduction and medical exam process, leaving most of the work to the smaller gray aliens, with the mantids rarely examining the abductees themselves. Abductees also commonly report that the mantids stare deeply into their eyes, seemingly extracting information or manipulating the emotions or mental state of the abductee, as other NHI do. In 2008, hunter Ricky Sorrells witnessed a gigantic UFO over a pasture behind his home in Dublin, Texas. While hunting, Ricky noticed that the sky went dark. He looked up to see that it was being blotted out by a gigantic object hovering roughly 300 feet above his head. The surface was a flat gray metal with cone-shaped indentations roughly 40 feet apart. Heat distortions also appeared on the craft's surface. Ricky decided against firing on the object, and instead got a closer look at the skin of the craft by using his scope. He estimated that the craft was at least 3 football field lengths. While observing the object under his scope, he came across what appeared to be a porthole, where a large, praying mantis-like creature was staring back at him. He was initially laughed off and mocked when he came forward with his encounter. However, this sighting preceded one of the most recent mass UFO sightings, the Stevensville Lights incident, in which, at minimum, dozens would bear witness. Some of these encounters involved military engagements with UAP and were corroborated by FAA radar data. What's really interesting is that giant psychic praying mantises, as oddly specific as that is, are commonly reported not only during alien abductions or UFO encounters, but also during psychedelic experiences. This leads some researchers and psychonauts to wonder if these creatures exist on some other plane of reality or dimension and are capable of manifesting before us, or if psychedelics like DMT, known as the spirit molecule, could truly be a gateway to interacting with these entities. Ningen. The ningen, Japanese for human, is a gigantic aquatic humanoid that allegedly dwells in the subarctic waters of the South Pacific Ocean, reportedly seen by Japanese fishermen. On May 11th of 2002, at 1:21 p.m., a post was made on the occult section of 2chan under a thread titled Giant Fish, Monster Fish. The following post is the origin of the Ningen legend. Quote, I heard that the research whaling surrounding the Antarctic Sea, conducted by the Japanese government, is not only conducting research on the whales they catch, but also researching and recording whales they do not catch. In the last few years of research, it is said that some objects that cannot be officially announced have been witnessed. This information is gained directly from someone involved. These are what is called among people related to whaling research, human-shaped objects. There are several types of them, such as one that looks like a human with 4 limbs and a head, and one that looks as if 2 humans' upper bodies are joined. They emerge from the water just like whales. The whole body is white, and the size is a few tens of meters long. I heard that nobody had seen such a thing when they were conducting whaling years ago. They are really baffled at it, because an official announcement of the object could overturn the credibility of current whaling research. They are just recording them, but that does not mean that they are vigorously conducting research on them, as they have to submit their research schedule to the International Committee. They cannot change their schedule or flexibility. The person who told me this story said, "You can tell this story, but please keep me anonymous, though I am pretty sure that other people are telling this story too. That's all I heard." This began a chain of threads about the Ningen that lasted into 2003, solidifying the Ningen's infamy. This creature is essentially a creepypasta, with no real evidence to support its existence, and no reports of the creature predating the original 2chan post. Owlman. Artist, magician, and author Tony Shields reported that on April 17, 1976, 2 young girls, Vicky and June Melling, saw a giant bird, or flying humanoid, hovering above the tower of St. Monin and St. Stephen's Church in Monin, Cornwall. On July 4, 1976, 2 teenagers, Sally Chapman and Barbara Perry, were camping in the woods outside of Monin when they too saw a winged humanoid. The creature stared at them from 20 yards away before rising vertically and disappearing. On August 2, 1978, 2 years later, 3 French girls saw what looked like a huge furry bird with large eyes and a gaping mouth in the same area. In 1995, Simon Parker, the night editor of the Western Morning News, received the following report of an Owlman encounter. Dear Sir, I'm a student of marine biology at the Field Museum, Chicago, on the last day of summer vacation in England. Last Sunday evening, I had a most unique and frightening experience in the wooded area near the old church at Monaghan, Cornwall. I experienced what I can only describe as a vision from hell. The time was 15 minutes after 9, more or less. I was walking along a narrow track through the trees. I was halted in my tracks when about 30 meters ahead, I saw a monstrous birdman thing. It was the size of a man with a ghastly face, a wide mouth, glowing eyes, and pointed ears. It had huge clawed wings and was covered in feathers of silver-gray color. The thing had long bird legs, which terminated in black claws. It saw me and rose, floating towards me. I just screamed, then turned and ran for my life. The whole experience was totally irrational and dreamlike. Friends tell me that there is a tradition of a phantom owlman in that district. Now I know why. I have seen the phantom myself. Please don't publish my real name and address. This could adversely affect my career. Now I have to rethink my worldview entirely. In 2019, two paranormal investigators, Mark Davies and Chris Power, claimed they were attacked by this owlman and even managed to get a picture from the incident. The two of them were in the Falmouth graveyard, Cornwall, at night when they heard a hissing sound followed by the flapping of wings above them. The investigators were carrying K2 meters for detecting electromagnetic disturbances. They claimed that they were receiving coherent responses on the meter from their questioning. They saw a tall winged figure with horns on its head, which they claim is shown in this image. It's said that the camera broke and Power received phantom scratches on his arm. Davies felt a, quote, surge of energy, and half an hour later, he began suffering a burning sensation. It's been suggested that Owlman was nothing more than a Eurasian eagle owl, as the church where the being was sighted is a common nesting site for owls. It's also possible that Tony Shields fabricated the initial sightings. Gareth Medway, an occult historian, noted that witnesses claiming encounters with a similar legendary monster promoted by Shields were, quote, friends of Doc Shields, or relatives of Doc Shields, or reported their sightings to Doc Shields and to no one else, or else wrote letters describing what they had seen to newspapers and were never interviewed by anyone. Shields describes himself first and foremost as an artist, and has referred to his body of work as a form of alchemy that he called surrealchemy. This involved, quote, invoking the monsters with the aid of a coven of nude witches, attempting to invoke a sea monster which he may have fabricated, and apparently faked photographs of other sea monsters. However, as I said, there are later sightings of the Owlman that are not connected to Shields, and there is a wealth of winged humanoid sightings from around the world that continues to grow. The Pacific Northwest tree octopus, an internet hoax that began in 1998, originating from a website called Save the PCNW Tree Octopus. The website insisted that the tree octopus was an elusive mollusk found only in the Pacific Northwest and had the ability to dwell on land and in water. It also suggested that the tree octopus be added to the endangered species list because of a reduction in its habitat by loggers as well as a boom in the local Sasquatch population. Again, this is just a hoax. The Minnesota Dogman. Like the Beast of Bray Road, or the Dueo, which we covered earlier, there are many sightings of wolfmen or dogmen type cryptids. Over the years, Minnesota has had several reports of dogman type cryptids. The creature is consistently described as having the torso of a man and the head of a wolf, and is said to be roughly 7 feet tall. Most of the reports I'm able to find are submitted anonymously, which gives me cause to question their credibility. But then again, these reports often ruin or at least gravely damage the reputation of the witness, due to the stigma associated with this phenomenon. Journalist Linda Godfrey, who investigated the Beast of Bray Road and other dogmen sightings, received a report from an anthropologist who claims that he encountered a dogman near the Sherburne National Wildlife Refuge in Minnesota. The witness regularly commuted to work, driving 40 miles from St. Cloud to Princeton. In March of 2006, the witness struck a deer with his car while driving near the Sherburne National Wildlife Refuge while taking State Highway 95. Since that accident, the witness began to drive slowly around the area. His report states, "In mid-April, about 6 weeks after I struck the deer, I was passing the refuge, driving slowly, looking for deer. I saw the reflection of eyes, like a deer or raccoon, near the south bank of the highway. I slowed down further and the animal bolted out, 20 feet in front of my car. It crossed the road from south to north. I wish I could tell you that it was another deer, but I'm convinced that it wasn't. Whatever it was, it moved on 2 legs, not 4. I only saw it for a few seconds, and my adrenaline was pumping, thinking I was going to hit another animal, but I can see the flashes of what I saw in front of me in my mind's eye as clear as yesterday. Its forward limbs did not touch the ground. This was bipedal, maybe 6 or 7 feet tall. It was brown or maybe dark gray. The eyes were reflective like a deer's. Its limbs were long and robust like a man's, not spindly like a deer's. I think that it was covered with hair or fur, accounting for the color, and the shape of its face was not flat like a man's, but prognathic to the point of having a snout like a dog's. It ran north across the highway, and I accelerated west towards St. Cloud. I have a degree in anthropology with a minor in biology, and a degree to teach social studies. I'm a teetotaler and have no serious religious convictions. The point is that I'm not prone to flights of fancy or wild imagination. I didn't see a deer or a black bear, and if it was a man in a suit, he ran the risk of becoming roadkill. Again, this is anonymous, so obviously it should be taken with a grain of salt, but it's still interesting. I'll leave links in the description to other Dogman sightings in Minnesota. Quetzalcoatl, a deity in Aztec mythology, considered to be the god of wind, Venus, the sun, merchants, arts, crafts, knowledge, and learning. He was also considered to be a culture hero or a civilizing hero who taught the Aztec agriculture and gave them the calendar. The god's name means plumed serpent, and he is often depicted as a great feathered serpent. Skunk ape. Though Bigfoot sightings are mostly known to come from the Pacific Northwest or northwestern United States, reports of mysterious hairy ape-like creatures are made from across the continent and across the world. To many, the skunk ape is the Bigfoot of the southeastern USA, or often the Florida Bigfoot, as it is often seen in forests and swamps, particularly the Everglades. The skunk ape is considered Bigfoot's cousin and gets its name from its terrible odor, often compared to skunk spray, rotting eggs, wet dog, or all 3. It is also described as having dark brown, black, or reddish fur, and often reported to be 5 to 9 feet tall. By 1818, there were newspaper reports of a man-sized monkey stalking fishermen and raiding food stores. As the decades passed, the sightings continued and increased dramatically in the 1970s. In February of 1971, H.C. Osborne was camping near an Indian mound in the Fort Lauderdale area. While inside his tent, he was hit with an overwhelming odor. Outside of his tent, he saw an 8-foot-tall, 700-pound man-ape covered in light brown fur. The following morning, he discovered 5-toed footprints which were 11 inches wide and nearly 18 inches in length. Another incident took place in 1974 when Palm Beach County Sheriff's Deputy Marvin Lewis and Deputy Ernie Milner were west of Lantana. The officers were allegedly stalked by the skunk ape through a barbed wire fence. Eventually, the 2 men shot at the creature, causing it to groan and flee. Marvin Lewis would later say of the skunk ape, quote, "I know it exists." By 1977, the sightings became so frequent that lawmakers attempted to pass a law that would protect the creature if it was captured. In 1977, State Representative Paul Nuckols tried to pass House Bill 1664, which would have made it a misdemeanor to, quote, "take, possess, harm, or molest anthropoid or humanoid animals." He would say of the bill, quote, "I'd hate to see someone catch one and put it in a circus or in a zoo." This bill to protect humanoid creatures was introduced but never passed. In 1997, a particularly dramatic encounter took place when a tour bus of 30 to 40 people is said to have witnessed the creature, a, quote, 7-foot red-haired ape. The same year, and only 2 miles away, on July 21st, Fire Control Chief Vince Doerr photographed what he claimed was the skunk ape when it passed in front of his car. He stated, like many other witnesses, that he never believed in such a creature until he saw it himself. Real estate agent Jan Brock also saw the creature the same morning. Quote, "The thing just ran in front of my car. It was shaggy looking and very tall, maybe 6.5 or 7 feet tall." In the year 2000, the most famous photo of the skunk ape was anonymously sent to a sheriff's office, along with a letter. Quote, "Dear Sir or Madam, enclosed, please find some pictures I took. My husband says he thinks it is an orangutan. Is someone missing an orangutan? It is hard to judge from the photos how big this orangutan really is. It is in a crouching position in the middle of standing up from where it was sitting. It froze as soon as the flash went off. I didn't even see it as I took the first picture because it was so dark. As soon as the flash went off for the second time, it stood up and started to move. I then heard the orangutan walk off into the brushes. From where I was standing, I judge it as being about 6.5 to 7 feet tall in a kneeling position. As soon as I realized how close it was, I got back to the house. It had an awful smell that lasted well after it left my yard. The orangutan was making deep whoop noises. It sounded much farther away than it turned out to be. If I'd known it was as close to the hedgerow as it was, I wouldn't have walked up as close as I did. I'm a senior citizen, and if this animal had come out of the hedgerow after me, there wasn't a thing I could have done about it. For 2 nights prior, it had been taking apples that my daughter brought down from up north, off our back porch. These pictures were taken on the 3rd night it had raided my apples. It only came back 1 more night after that, and took some apples that my husband had left out in order to get a better look at it. We left out 4 apples. I cut 2 of them in half. The orangutan only took the whole apples. We didn't see it take them. We weighed it up, but eventually had to go back to bed. We got a dog back there now, and as far as we can tell, the orangutan hasn't been back. In photo 1, there is a leaf just above the creature's mouth that looks to be a part of the vegetation in the foreground. However, in picture 2, where the creature has moved slightly, the same leaf is still in place above the creature's mouth, almost as if it were a mustache. In addition to this, a more recent ELA or error level analysis of the photo has shown that the photos do have signs of manipulation, and that there are discrepancies in the brightness levels on a level that the human eye can't ordinarily see. It's believed that the photo was likely created by a known hoaxer. Though these photos, the Myaka skunk ape photos, are the most famous evidence and seem to be fake, this doesn't entirely rule out the entire history of sightings of this creature. Spring-heeled Jack. From 1837 to 1904, a span of 67 years, there were many encounters with Spring-heeled Jack, otherwise known as Springheel Jack, Springald, or the Leaping Terror, was a strange aggressive phantom that stalked the streets of London, the Midlands, and Scotland. He was commonly described as having a horrible, disgusting face and glowing red eyes. He wore a black cloak, colored tights, and had metal claws. However, there were many strange sightings in this period that were attributed to Springheel Jack, despite being described completely differently. Sometimes he was described as wearing a fishbowl on his head. In one account, he was described as, quote, an unearthly warrior in polished bronze armor. Springheel Jack was often compared to the devil or a demonic being. In October of 1837, Mary Stevens was walking through Clapham Common when a man leaped at her from a dark alleyway. Her assailant held her down, kissed her face, and used his claws to slice at her clothes. In her deposition, she stated that his claws felt cold and clammy as those of a corpse. Mary screamed and the man ran away. Locals searched for the attacker but failed. The next day, the same man was reportedly seen near her home by multiple witnesses. The man ran out in front of a carriage, causing the coachman to crash, severely injuring himself. According to multiple accounts, the man then ran away cackling with high-pitched laughter and leaped over a wall which was 9 feet in height. These sightings were reported in newspapers which called the man Springheel Jack. 3 young women were attacked in 1837, and sightings persisted through 1839. After a brief respite, the Leaping Terror reportedly returned in 1843 and 1845. One 13-year-old girl was reportedly murdered by Springheel Jack when he threw her into a sewer. The last reported sighting attributed to Springheel Jack took place in 1904 in Everton, Bedford, when it was alleged that a winged bat-like humanoid was seen leaping between rooftops. There is so much more to all this, and I plan to do a video covering the rest of the case, the supposed murder connections, and other similar cases from around the world. Some crime historians believe that there could be some truth behind the Springheel Jack sightings. Werewolf, meaning man-wolf, is commonly understood to be a human with the power to shapeshift into a wolf-like creature. There are many ways to become a werewolf, as told in ancient legends. Some legends claim that transformation into a wolf is made possible by wearing a wolfskin belt or a wolf pelt. In other accounts, this is achieved by applying a magic salve to the skin, which is sometimes hallucinogenic. Lycanthropos is Greek for wolf man, and is what the term lycanthropy is derived from. Clinical lycanthropy is a rare psychiatric syndrome wherein a person believes he or she has been transformed into, or is, a non-human animal. In Greek mythology, King Lycaon of Arcadia was transformed into a wolf by Zeus as punishment for the ritual sacrifice of his baby. In the 5th century BC, ancient Greek historian Herodotus wrote that the Neuri of Scythia were known to transform into wolves for days on end. From the 15th century to the 18th century, werewolf trials accompanied the witch hunts and witch trials, because in many such cases, lycanthropy was also seen as a form of witchcraft or Satanism. Many pagans and serial killers from the medieval era were accused of being werewolves, and some were essentially forced to confess to their lycanthropy before being put to death. In 1589, the werewolf of Bedburg, Peter Stump, confessed to the murders of 18 people. He claimed that he was given a magic girdle by the devil, which allowed him to transform into a wolf to commit his murders. It's believed now that Stump may have suffered from clinical lycanthropy. A Mrs. Delbert Gregg of Gregton, Texas, claimed that one night in July of 1958, she witnessed a large, shaggy wolf-like creature with glowing slitted eyes and large fangs that clawed at her window screen. She ran away, retrieved a flashlight, and shined it on the creature, which retreated into the brush. She claims that later, a tall man emerged from the brush and walked away, never to be seen again. Sightings of these bipedal canids are sometimes associated or connected to other sightings of hairy bipeds. The White River Monster. July 1st, 1915, at the White River in northeast Arkansas, we have our first reported sighting of the White River Monster. A local plantation owner saw the creature in the river and described it as having gray skin and being, quote, as wide as a car and 3 cars long. In early January of 1937, another famous series of sightings of the White River Monster took place. Allegedly, fishermen were struggling to catch fish in the White River when they witnessed the creature. Another local plantation owner, Bramlett Bateman, also spotted the creature and stated that it had the skin of an elephant, 4 or 5 feet wide by 12 feet long, with the face of a catfish, lolling on the surface of the water. Bateman decided to preemptively strike the creature down, fearing that it could somehow threaten his crops. He decided to get some TNT and detonate the area where he saw the creature, but the authorities denied Bateman permission to blow up the monster. Within a fairly short period of time, over 100 people reported sightings of the White River Monster, and multiple attempts were made to capture it. Like-minded folks from across the nation came with machine guns, explosives, and cameras, determined to slay the monster. A netting operation as well as divers also failed to find the creature. In 1971, there was another well-documented series of sightings of the White River monster. Witnesses stated, quote, "It looked as if the thing was peeling all over, but it was a smooth type of skin or flesh, and the creature was also described as being the size of a boxcar with a bone protruding from its forehead. The creature reportedly made noises that sounded like a cow's moo and a horse's neigh." In 1973, a bill by State Senator Robert Harvey created the White River Monster Refuge, making it illegal to shoot, explode, or otherwise maim or brutalize the cryptid. The existence of this creature is not what's generally disputed even by most skeptics. However, theories as to the monster's identity have ranged greatly. Biologist and cryptozoologist Roy Mackal proposed that the creature could be an elephant seal, though the White River would be far outside the range of an elephant seal. Paranormal investigator Joe Nickel believes that the creature could be a sea cow. The phoenix is a mythical bird, originating in Egyptian myth and then spreading into other systems. The phoenix was compared to the size of an eagle with a red and gold plumage. It was associated with immortality, as the creature was said to at least 500 to over 12,000 years before burning to death and rising from its own ashes. According to Herodotus, the phoenix originated in Egyptian mythology. In the Egyptian myth, the phoenix was said to carry ashes to the city of the sun, Heliopolis, and deposit them on the altar of the sun god. This is one of the reasons that the phoenix is associated with sun worship, as well as immortality and resurrection. The giant Congo snake. Colonel Remy van Leerde was a decorated veteran for the RAF and the Belgian Air Force, with an impressive list of achievements. He became Deputy Chief of Staff for the Belgian Minister of Defense. He was an aide to King Leopold III. He escaped a concentration camp, held second place for highest number of enemy bombers shot down, was among the top 10 Belgian flying aces of World War II, one of the first Belgians to break the sound barrier, and later became commander of the Kaminga Air Base in the Congo. In short, Van Leerde was a credible, trained observer. In 1959, Colonel Van Leerde was piloting a helicopter, carrying a few others returning from a mission in the Katanga region of the Congo. At a height of 150 feet above the ground, the crew spotted an absolute leviathan of a serpent. They estimated the serpent was 50 feet long, with its head alone being 2 feet wide. It was a dark shade of brown and green with a white belly. Van Leerde circled back and made between 4 and 6 passes over the snake, so that one of his crew members could capture this photo. Allegedly, there is a second photo of the Congo snake, which has never been released to the public. The colonel descended to get a better look, but then the snake raised 10 feet as if it were going to strike the helicopter. It came so close that Van Leerde felt uncomfortable and instead flew away. According to cryptozoologist Bernard Heuvelmans, he interviewed several naturalists who were experts in the wildlife in the Congo. All of these experts agreed that the vegetation pictured were trees and the shadows were termite mounds. They also agreed that the snake was massive. His contacts also flew to the site of the encounter and took more photos for comparison. Heuvelmans also interviewed wildlife photographer Ray Turkafs, who upon analysis agreed that the snake did appear to be gigantic. Given the height of the helicopter, which was estimated at 45 to 50 meters, and the angle of the camera, Turkafs found that the snake must have been 12 to 14 meters long, or 39 to 45 feet in length, with a diameter of 43 to 47 centimeters, or 16 to 18 inches. More recently, Reddit user ButtDonald's Happy Meal was able to find the exact location where the photo was taken in order to measure the creature's size, and judging by his measurements, the snake does appear to be around 50 feet long. The fossil record shows us that the giant Congo snake would be among the largest snakes to have ever existed. The giant Congo snake is believed to be either a giant version of the African rock python, a surviving descendant of the Eocene snake Gigantophis, or an entirely undiscovered type of snake. Ancient astronauts. The ancient astronaut theory states that our tales of divine beings from mythology and religion were our ancestors misinterpreting the visitation of extraterrestrial beings. Author Erich von Däniken was the first to popularize this theory in his book Chariots of the Gods, though it's difficult to say who actually came up with the idea first. Zacharias Sitchin's book series, The 12th Planet, explores his interpretation of ancient texts and his theory that the old gods were actually extraterrestrials from a supposed 12th planet in the solar system called Nibiru or Nibiru. Really, there are many ancient astronaut theories surrounding different subjects, ancient monuments, and legends from around the world. One example would be the ancient astronaut theories surrounding the Dogon tribe of Mali in West Africa, which mostly originates from the book The Serious Mystery by Robert K.G. Temple. Allegedly, the Dogon tribe knew of the star Sirius B, which is normally invisible to the naked eye. They had this advanced astronomical knowledge despite lacking the astronomical knowledge or tools to actually observe this star. In fact, Sirius B was unknown to science until 1862. Temple theorized that the Dogon's advanced astronomical knowledge and oral histories record ancient contact between the Dogon tribe and extraterrestrials. The ancient astronaut theory is now well known because of the Ancient Aliens TV show, which was inspired by Däniken's book. Though the TV show has some glaring errors and sometimes blatantly misrepresents facts, many researchers and authors have discussed similar theories based around ancient contact with non-human intelligence, totally separate from some of the silly ideas discussed on Ancient Aliens. Man-eating tree. There are several strange accounts of trees that eat people. Some of these are admitted hoaxes, such as the Madagascar tree, while others originate in folklore. According to James W. Buell's 1899 book, Sea and Land, the Yate veo is a plant native to Africa and South America. It was said to make a hissing sound, similar to the Spanish phrase Yate veo. Additionally, it was said to have spines that resemble, quote, many huge serpents in an angry discussion, occasionally darting from side to side as if striking at an imaginary foe. It would use these spines to ensnare and crush its prey, absorbing the blood. Doppelganger, German for double walker, is now understood to be an unrelated look-alike of a person, or a twin stranger. This phenomenon has become more prevalent since the advent of the internet. A 2022 study on a group of doppelgangers found that, though they are not related by ancestry, they actually share many genetic variants. Even modern facial recognition software struggled to differentiate some of the lookalikes. In Germanic lore, all living beings have a spirit double who is normally invisible, but is an exact copy of the living being. Doppelgangers were known as the negative spiritual counterpart to the living. Doppelgangers were said to have been seen while the person was alive, unlike a ghost, which only appears after death. Seeing the apparition of someone's doppelganger was considered a bad omen. Catherine Crow's 1848 book on paranormal phenomena, The Night Side of Nature, was what popularized the term doppelganger to describe this phenomenon. There are analogues in many other cultures, such as Scandinavian and Finnish mythology, and others. However, the same concept goes all the way back to ancient Egypt. In ancient Egyptian mythology, the Ka was described as a spirit double which possessed the same memories and emotions as its counterpart. As I said, many other cultures and traditions have long had beliefs about doppelgangers under other names, using other terms to describe this seemingly paranormal phenomenon. Francis Grose's Provincial Glossary of 1787 defined the term fetch as the apparition of a living person. Many believe their encounters with these apparitions to be a sign of doom, a bad omen. In some cases, they appear to be right. In 1612, while in Paris, it is alleged that English metaphysical poet and scholar, John Donne, was shaken to its core by a paranormal experience. Given that he was visibly distressed, when he was asked to divulge what troubled him, he stated, "I have seen a dreadful vision since I saw you. I have seen my dear wife pass twice by me through this room, with her hair hanging about her shoulders and a dead child in her arms. This I have seen since I saw you." When it was suggested that he was only dreaming, he said, "I cannot be sure that I now live, than that I have not slept since I saw you, and am assure that at her second appearing, she stopped, looked me in the face, and vanished." On the same night, Donne and his wife suffered the stillbirth of their daughter. English poet Percy Shelley relayed to his wife, famous author Mary Shelley of Frankenstein fame, of his recent paranormal experiences. These experiences took place a week after Mary had a nearly fatal miscarriage. According to Mary, on June 23rd, Percy had suffered a nightmare about the house collapsing in a flood, and saw the apparition of himself. Shortly after, on July 8th, Percy drowned. Discussing his experiences, Mary wrote, "Talking it over the next morning, he told me that he had had many visions lately. He had seen the figure of himself, which met him as he walked on the terrace, and said to him, 'How long do you mean to be content?' No very terrific words, and certainly not prophetic of what has occurred. But Shelley had often seen these figures when ill. But the strangest thing is that Mrs. Williams saw him. Now Jane, a woman of sensibility, has not much imagination, and is not in the slightest degree nervous, neither in dreams or otherwise. She was standing one day, the day before I was taken ill, June 15th, at a window that looked at the terrace with Trelawney. It was day. She saw, as she thought, Shelley pass by the window, as he often was then, without a coat or jacket. He passed again, now as he passed both times the same way. And as from the side towards which he went, each time there was no way to get back except past the window again, except over a wall 20 feet from the ground. She was struck at seeing him pass twice thus, and looked out, and seeing him no more, she cried, "Good God, can Shelley have leapt from the wall? Where can he be gone?" "Shelley," said Trelawney. "No, Shelley has passed. What do you mean?" Trelawney says that she trembled exceedingly when she heard this, and it proved indeed that Shelley had never been on the terrace, and was far off at the time she saw him. As I said, shortly following these experiences, Percy Shelley drowned. These experiences of supernatural or psychical phenomenon preceding such a tragic event are not uncommon to occult lore or the accounts of some experiencers to this day. Goethe, an 18th century German poet, wrote about his own encounters with doppelgangers in his autobiography Poetry and Truth. While Goethe was traveling to the city of Drusenheim, Goethe saw with his mind's eye another person riding towards him. Goethe realized that the mysterious figure was himself wearing different clothes. After the apparition disappeared, Goethe forgot all about the incident until 8 years later, when he found himself riding on the same path in the opposite direction, wearing the very clothes he saw his doppelganger wearing 8 years ago. It seems that Goethe somehow saw himself through his mind's eye. The Arica Monster. In the Atacama Desert of Chile, a living bird-like dinosaur is thought to exist. The Arica Monster is described as being 6 feet tall and bipedal, similar to a dromaeosaurid dinosaur, although other reports do describe the creature as being more kangaroo-like rather than a dinosaur. Military officer Hernan Cuevas, Dario Riquelme, and 3 others allege that they encountered, quote, "a huge beast, much like a 2-legged dinosaur with huge thighs, which crossed the road and ran into the wilderness. The creature was shortly followed by another of its own kind. The second creature was further described by Dario as gray in color, hairless, and about 2 meters high. The witnesses could only compare the creature to the velociraptors from Jurassic Park. Multiple reports of the Arica Monster came in 2004. For example, a Spanish family driving home toward the city of Arica witnessed a, quote, dog-faced kangaroo-like creature which walked across the road. In another account, 4 unidentified creatures, described as birds with dogs' heads and backswept wings, and compared to gargoyles, were witnessed by another family. One of the creatures allegedly flew or leaped over the car, and was also able to keep pace with the car at nearly 100 kilometers per hour. Skeptics believe that these sightings are merely misidentified ostriches, as there are ostriches in the area on nearby farms, but witnesses such as Dario insist otherwise, claiming that he knows what ostriches look like. The TV show Destination Truth investigated this creature and found a 3-toed footprint, which later turned out to be a great rhea, an ostrich. Ghouls. Ghouls are commonly compared to demonic entities and originate in pre-Islamic Arabian folklore. Some say that ghouls are a type of jinn, while others say that ghouls are burned devils. They are known for lurking in cemeteries and abandoned, desolate places. They are said to consume human flesh, and some say they possess the ability to shapeshift. The ghoul shapeshifts in order to lure away weary travelers and consume their flesh, often taking the form of the last human they consumed, or the form of a woman to lure in men. In Islamic theology, ghouls are believed to be either jinn or originally a marid, a type of powerful devil that suffered burns from comets while attempting to rise to heaven, becoming disfigured and insane, doomed to walk the earth as a ghoul. It is said that the only way to defeat a ghoul is to kill it with one attack, as a second attack will only bring it to life again. Okapi. An ex-cryptid, known as the African unicorn, the creature is commonly described as resembling a chimeric hybrid of a donkey, zebra, and a giraffe. Long before it was known to Western science, the Okapi was depicted in the early 5th century BCE. The Okapi was well known by the natives long before Western academia recognized its existence. Europeans in Africa heard tales of the then mythical creature, calling it the African unicorn. Many academics dismissed the possibility of its existence completely, suggesting it was just an imaginary amalgamation of other animals. Despite this, explorers and natives alike alleged that the creature existed. In 1887, Henry Morton Stanley journeyed across the Congo and heard tales of the Okapi, called the Ati by the Pygmies. In a later interview, Stanley stated that he, quote, believed that it existed on account of the numerous tracks we found in the wet clay of the forest. Stanley's writings inspired Sir Harry Johnston to track down the elusive creature. After rescuing a group of pygmies from being abducted by a showman, they divulged their knowledge of the Ati to Johnston. They were able to lead Johnston to a peculiar set of cloven-hoofed tracks, evidence of the Ati's presence. Though the Okapi itself managed to elude Johnston, he was able to get his hands on samples of its skin from a hunter, and later, a skull. The Okapi's cryptidhood ended in 1901, when it was formally recognized by the Zoological Society of London. The father of cryptozoology himself, Bernard Heuvelmans, regarded the Okapi as a major victory for cryptozoological methodology. The Okapi became the symbol for the International Cryptozoological Society, as well as its spiritual successor, the International Cryptozoology Society, symbolizing a triumph of cryptozoology breaking into mainstream science. The Okapi is now an endangered species, with its population reduced roughly 50% in the last 20 years. It is the only known living relative of the giraffe. In the description, you can find a link to the Okapi Conservation Project. Wanderlight. Otherwise known as will-o'-the-wisps, or Ignis Fatu, are a type of atmospheric ghost lights, or orbs, that have been witnessed in rural countrysides across the world, particularly over swamps and marshlands. Atmospheric ghost lights are of unknown origin, and there are a variety of hypotheses and proven causes of these unidentified lights. In English and European folklore, wanderlights were believed to be spirits, fairies, or elemental spirits. To people traveling at night, the lights appeared as a flickering lamp or lanterns, which could lead travelers astray. There have been many sightings of similar orbs in connection with ghost sightings or the UFO phenomenon. Modern science explains these sightings of wanderlights in swamps as a result of a chemical reaction from organic decay, which releases light, often resulting from swamp gas, or the result of seismic activity causing intense strains on rocks containing crystals, generating and releasing piezoelectricity. Sightings of wanderlights in swamps have drastically decreased in areas where they were previously sighted due to land development, terraforming swamps into farmland, or for other use. Some examples of atmospheric ghost lights that have yet to be identified are the Hesdalen Lights in Hesdalen Valley, Norway.
Rognene. Vi så da sydover i dalen her, og midt på natta, sånn ved 2-3-tida, så begynte det å skje ting. Det som hendte da var det at det så ut som det var et slags tett objekt. Det kunne se ut som kall det metallisk sky, som plutselig oppstod på et sted. Og så flyttet det seg, og 5 ganger så klarte vi å ta bilder av akkurat dette skjedde. Og det siste som skjedde med den metalliske skyen, det var på størrelse da med en låve. Så forsvant den, og så dukket den da opp som en sånn ildmørje. Rett etter det så stoppet den ildmørja lyset, og så dukket det opp 2 lys. Det ene litt større enn det andre ved siden av hverandre, som krasjet rett i bakken der borte. I det her skjedde, at den traff tretoppene der borte, så kom det ut en blå, spiralerende lysstrek som føk bortover sånn. Den her blå lysstrålen, den treffer da toppen på et tre der borte. Og med en gang den treffer det, rett etterpå det, så forandrer den bølgelengden i hvordan den spiralerer bortover. Og da blir det mye lengre mellom hver topp på spiralen.
These lights are a very well documented, unidentified, anomalous phenomenon that is under constant study by the Project Hesdalen and the observatory there. They have set up cameras to automatically react to and record the lights whenever they do appear. Prominent UFO researcher and astronomer J. Allen Hynek visited the site in the past. If you're interested, I recommend checking out Project Hesdalen's website, which houses all the pictures and videos of the lights, as well as the related research. Yeren. Chinese for wild man. It's commonly understood as another regional variant or relative of Sasquatch. Allegedly found in the uninhabited mountains and forests of China, particularly in the Hubei province. There are actually 2 commonly reported types of this creature, one bipedal and a smaller quadrupedal creature, while others believe this creature walks both on 2 legs and on all 4s. The bipedal creature has been reported up to 10 feet tall. This ape man is often said to have long, light brown or red hair, long arms, and allegedly stands at over 6 feet tall, sometimes up to 10 feet tall. In Tibet, the creature is commonly reported to have white hair, darker hair in the Yunnan province, and reddish-brown in the Hubei province. There are ancient legends of wild men, or hairy men, going back over 2,000 years, chronicled in folklore and by well-respected ancient Chinese historians. These creatures were said to dwell in forests, mountains, and caves, only emerging to raid villages to abduct and wed humans. There are some very graphic descriptions of victims wedded by the Yeren, which I cannot read here, but they can be found in the description. In 1959, Beijing's Institute of Vertebrate Paleontology and Paleoanthropology searched for the Yeti as part of their survey of Mount Everest. As paleoanthropologists communicated to Soviet colleagues reports of ape-men cryptids across China. One professor linked the Tibetan Yeti with the Chinese Yeren. He speculated Yeren are the source of Chinese ghost and spirit folklore, much like how manatees allegedly inspired some mermaid stories. He speculated that the Yeren was a descendant of Gigantopithecus. During the rule of Chairman Mao Zedong, the government began to crack down on folklore and superstitious beliefs, paranoid that legends of Yeti would limit the productivity of farmers, scaring them too much to tend to their crops. Repeating stories of these encounters would sometimes result in a criminal offense. In 1977, repeated sightings of the Yeren and the Shininjina forest sparked a government expedition to find the Yeren. The expedition was funded by the Chinese Academy of Sciences. Its members included zoologists, anthropologists, as well as members of the Chinese military. Due to the sheer amount of people involved in this expedition, it is now considered to have been counterproductive, as the operation was so large that it would have scared away any wild man or Yeren. In 1988, a team of 100 Chinese researchers associated with the China Wildman Research Center converged on a mountainous Hubei province, where sightings of a mysterious man-ape date back almost 3,000 years. The researchers found and analyzed numerous hair samples. They identified several hairs that do not belong to any known species in the area, and concluded that the hairs prove the existence of a rare and advanced primate that is similar to man. By 2018, the number of reported Yeren sightings surpassed 400, still with no clear answer for the phenomenon. It's believed that some of the ancient sightings of the wild man were possibly inspired by early contact and encounters with bearded Europeans, or escaped laborers who were conscripted to build the Great Wall of China. It's believed that many Yeren sightings are misidentifications of Asian black bears or gibbon apes. Some alleged wild men have been proven to be misidentified rhesus monkeys. Others believe that the Yeren could be an unidentified species of orangutan, relict populations of hominids, or Neanderthals, as suggested by Soviet historians, or a surviving Gigantopithecus. Ifrit, a powerful class of undead spirits which haunt ruins and temples and live in the underworld according to Islamic lore. These are commonly compared to the genius loci in Roman and European mythology, which are believed to be the protective spirit of a location. They are also compared to the evil type genius loci, as both are malevolent spirits which haunt ruins or temples. The Beast of Exmoor, a type of phantom cat or alien black cat, a big cat found outside its indigenous range, although some witnesses do describe a creature with a German Shepherd-like head. Since the 1970s, the Beast of Exmoor has been sighted in the fields of Exmoor in Devon and Somerset, England. Hundreds of livestock deaths have been attributed to the beast. In 1983, farmer Eric Lay had over 100 of his sheep murdered in a span of only 3 months, with all deaths caused by attacks to the throat. This proved the legends to the locals, and unexplained livestock murders have been blamed on the Exmoor beast ever since. 16-year-old student Susan Fernandez saw the Exmoor beast while being driven to work in North Devon. She stated, quote, "I saw a very big black animal in a field. At first I thought it was a cat, but it was too big for that. It was black and had a long tail. There was white on each foot. Additionally, large paw prints were found and examined by experts who believed they were left by a panther weighing 70 pounds. In response to the sightings, a cash prize equivalent to $1,600 was put up for video evidence of the creature, and the British government sent in Royal Marine snipers to seek and destroy the Exmoor beast in Operation Beastie. For 3 nights, the snipers searched for the phantom cat, and allegedly a few Marines had fleeting sightings of the beast. The commanding officer of Operation Beastie stated that the creature behaved with high, almost human intelligence and, quote, always moved with surrounding cover amongst hedges and woods. After the 3rd night, the operation was called off for fear that an amateur photographer seeking the reward would be mistakenly shot. Superintendent Douglas McClary stated, "Until we shoot the damned thing, we don't know what it is." By 1987, the Beast of Exmoor had killed over 200 animals. Locals have theorized that the creature used a nearby abandoned mine as its lair. It's also been theorized that the beast was a black panther or cougar that was released from a private collection in the 70s, after private ownership of exotic pets was outlawed. The British Big Cat Society has gathered evidence that at least 23 releases of big cats into the wild occurred after private ownership of these types of pets was outlawed. In 2005, a farmer in Devon discovered a skull which experts believe belonged to a puma. Could this be one of the infamous alien big cats? The Department for Environment, Food, and Rural Affairs has stated that, quote, based on the evidence, DEFRA does not believe that there are big cats living in the wild in England.
More recently, these alien black cats have become all too real. In 2022, following a sheep attack in Gloucestershire, black strands of hair were found on a barbed wire fence. This farmer had dealt with suspected big cat attacks on his farm previously. A sheep killed in 2017 was found to have tooth marks potentially belonging to a big cat. The black strands of hair were collected, and its mitochondrial DNA was studied in a forensic lab, which discovered a 99% match to the leopard species Panthera pardus. In October of 2024, a Cumbrian farmer, Sharon Larkin Snowden, stumbled upon what appeared to be a large black cat eating the corpse of one of her sheep. Quote, to my right, I saw something black running and assumed it was a sheepdog. Then I did a double take and realized it was a black cat. It ran towards a stone wall, stopped, and then jumped the wall. It was big, the size of a German Shepherd dog. The corpse was very fresh. Only some of the internal organs were consumed when she encountered the alien black cat. Larkin Snowden took a swab from the sheep's nose and limbs and sent them to a lab in the University of Warwick, which specializes in big cat DNA. The result was a positive identification of DNA belonging to the Panthera genus.
Santerre. The Santerre is a carnivorous phantom cat-like creature that was reported in the late 19th and early 20th centuries in North Carolina. Though opinions differ on the creature's appearance, it was described as a quadruped with long hair and a bald head. Its tail was said to have 8 knots in it, which it frequently uses as a weapon. The murders of livestock and the disappearances of children were attributed to the Santerre by newspapers of the time. Newspapers in Iredell reported sightings of the creature until at least 1934. Obviously, newspapers sometimes engage in yellow journalism, so it's possible that these accounts were sensationalized or entirely fabricated. It's highly likely that multiple encounters with different animals were all attributed to the Santerre by the newspapers. However, sightings of phantom cats persist in North Carolina to this day, an area where none are supposed to exist. Alien spores. I believe this entry refers to a mass of orange goo that washed up near the village of Kivalina, Alaska in 2011. When this happened, there was a lot of confusion and speculation as to what the goo was, with some people declaring the goo to be alien spores. In reality, the goo was just microscopic crustacean eggs. This entry could also be referring to star jelly, otherwise known as astral jelly, unidentified gelatinous substances that are sometimes found after meteor showers, but also under other conditions. Sometimes, this astral jelly is said to smell very foul and even glow. Astral jelly is often compared to angel hair, which is usually associated with the UFO phenomenon. Star jelly often dissolves shortly after being found. Star jelly has been reported since at least the 14th century, and there are various explanations for some samples, while others, such as the star jelly you're seeing now, are still unidentified. In Frank Edwards' book, Strange World, he discusses a very strange case of star jelly. Police officers John Collins and Joe Keenan were cruising the streets of Philadelphia in their patrol car on the night of September 26, 1950. As they made their way down a quiet side street near Vere Avenue and 26th Street, their headlights picked up a strange, shimmering object that seemed to be coming to Earth in an open field about half a block ahead of them. When they went to investigate, their flashlights revealed a domed disc of quivering jelly, 6 feet in diameter, 1 foot thick at the center, and an inch or two near the edge. They had a curious feeling that the thing was alive. They turned off their flashlights and saw the thing glowed with a dull purple color, and then they radioed for help. They were soon joined by Sergeant Joe Cook and Patrolman James Cooper. Sergeant Cook suggested they try and pick up the thing, but when Officer Collins attempted to do so, the thing fell apart in his hands like gelatin. The fragments that stuck to his hands soon evaporated, leaving behind only a sticky, odorless scum. Within a half hour of Cooper and Cook arriving, the entire mass had evaporated. In 2009, scientists working for the National Geographic Society conducted tests on star jelly samples and failed to identify it, with DNA tests not returning any results. This sharply contrasts with the authoritative narrative, which theorizes that reports of star jelly merely stem from the ovaries of frogs or toads, regurgitated by predators because it's not digestible. If this were the case for the anomalous samples of star jelly, DNA would have been found. On top of this, there are cases such as the one I just went over, where large amounts of star jelly are found at once, which rules out this explanation. There are a lot of theories about star jelly, but no real answers. Atmospheric beasts, described as cryptids which seem to live in the sky. Some believe that atmospheric beasts actually serve as a possible biological explanation for some UFO sightings. Cryptozoologist and author Ivan T. Sanderson believed that some UFOs were low-density, lighter-than-air organisms native to the skies. I've covered previously on the channel several cases of these so-called flying jellyfish, including a military encounter which has yet to be explained.